Welcome everyone to How to Launch Your First Out-of-Home Campaign. I'm Alexis Johnson, Marketing Program Specialist at OneScreen.ai. I'm excited to introduce today's speaker, David Kang, Director of Campaign and Media Strategy at OneScreen.ai. I'm really excited for his presentation today. He put together an awesome deck for you guys. So I'll hand it over to you, David.
Great. Thanks for the introduction. Hello, my name is David Kang. If you've registered for this webinar, I'm assuming maybe you tried out of home in the past and found the process a little bit overwhelming. Maybe you've looked into other channels, or maybe you're looking into other channels to drive your performance marketing mix. Perhaps you drove by a billboard one day and really wondered about how to get up on one. Whatever your reasons are, this presentation looks to address on a top line level how to best go about planning and buying your first out-of-home campaign. Given it's the first campaign, I'm just going to walk you through some of the basics that are incorporated into the process. So you want to plan out-of-home advertising. I will say now is a better time than ever. In a recent study conducted by OneScreen.ai, called the Post-Pandemic Marketing Renaissance, we've interviewed dozens of everyday people, your potential consumers, on what their perceptions are of out-of-home advertising and how that's shifted since the peak of the pandemic to where we are now. Some of the interesting statistics that we found were that 77% of consumers say that they notice their physical surroundings more now than before the pandemic. 86% of respondents could recall a brand or product name from an out-of-home ad they saw within the last 6 months. And 77% said they frequently learn about new brands or products via out-of-home ads. When I tell my friends and family that I work in the out-of-home industry, the immediate question that I get back is, what the heck is that, right? The simple answer I can tell them is that, oh, I work in billboards, but the answer really isn't that simple because out-of-home isn't just billboards. There's so many other nuances and different formats out there that falls under this umbrella. For a proper definition, I would say that out-of-home advertising is advertising that reaches consumers when they're outside of their homes. It offers a broad variety of different formats, which when used correctly can create immersive experiences to achieve different objectives. What I really like about out-of-home is that one, it has the power to amplify. It works really well with other media to give your messages amplification, expanding your reach and touch points beyond your other marketing mix. Really has the power to inspire with great creative, which has the capacity to stay top of mind to your audience. And lastly, it really has the power to influence. Bold, contextual relevant placements as well as creative can reach consumers right when they're ready to buy and really drive that sale that you're looking for. And when it comes to the actual planning and buying, I really see it as a balance of art, heart, and science. With the science element, there's metrics that we rely on, such as impressions, reach, which is the percentage of your target audience that you're looking to reach, the frequency at how many times you're reaching them, as well as TRPs, which is a standard unit of measurement that incorporates both reach and frequency and is commonly used as benchmarking metrics to determine success. There's also technological advances that equips planners with audience behavior tools to anonymously pinpoint where your target audiences are, as well as how they move throughout a given market. But with all those metrics, particularly the impressions, they're not all valued the same, right? The value of the impression is very important. Not only is reaching a high composition of your target audience important, but so is the feeling that you can invoke from them once they see your ad. With that in mind, I would love to get started on laying out the groundwork. I always recommend starting off with developing a strategy. The strategy will create a blueprint of sorts that can give your plan a guidance to best align with your objectives. To start building your strategy, some of the questions I like to ask myself is, what are my goals? Who do I want to reach? Where should I activate? When will my audience be the most receptive? As well as knowing why they should buy my product. And I'm going to dive into each of those questions and how I go about answering those questions. But before that, I do want to mention that with the strategy, the framework always leverages data. And we use that data to tell a story. I'm getting an assist here from our friend Scrunchy, who is our on-screen mascot. But this is kind of how we use data to tell a story, right? First, we build an audience persona, which is Scrunchy in this example. Look to where there are the most scrunchies within a country or within a market. And then really look and identify which roadways Scrunchy travels on the most, where he likes visiting, where he goes to work, where he goes to the gym or do groceries, so that we can really intercept him with advertising along that journey and pathways. So starting out with the questions, what are my objectives? It's my firm belief that out of home fits within any part of the marketing funnel. Understanding the maturity and the current use of your marketing mix is an important first step to understand what the right utilization of out of home is to achieve your outcomes. Maybe you're starting off marketing fresh. You want to achieve top brand awareness by making your name recognizable. Maybe you want to drive more interest and consideration by more frequent and intimate interactions. Or maybe you are more focused on the sale, which is an action at the bottom of the funnel, where you should really rely on contextual relevance when your audiences are within a buying mindset and environment. Who is my target audience? So we really like to start out with building a persona. A persona uses a mix of demographic and psychographic information to build an audience so then we can take into other tools to understand how they move throughout. OneScreen has a really great tool called Persona Builder, which is intended for that exact purpose, where you're able to ingest a lot of different data points about your specific audience that you've gathered beforehand. And then we're able to export that out as an output of a pre-built audience, which you can then use for other tools that we have to be able to achieve what I mentioned before. Understanding where they are within the US is also important. We can take that audience, Scrunchy, or the persona that we've built, look into ingesting that audience and where they are within the US. Then the OneScreen platform is also able to look into which markets or designated marketing areas has the highest composition of that specific audience. Once you can narrow down on a market, we're also able to use tools such as Geopath, for example, where we're able to look at specific areas where your audience hangs out the most or are outdoors the most as well. At this stage, I do want to note that data is not Bible, but a tool. And a tool is as powerful as its wielder. Leverage the data to provide guidance, but rely on eyes on the ground as well to make decisions that best fit your campaign. The next question I want to answer are, when are they the most receptive? This pertains a lot with identifying points of interest to plan against contextual relevance. Lean on where your products are sold, where your buyers are going to purchase it, and extend your reach from there. OneScreen has our place rank algorithm that can help you take a point of interest and also pull a wide array of information, expanding beyond a point of interest to build upon your reach and additional touch points. It's also important to understand your market. Just as important as the data I mentioned is eyes on the ground. Where are the popular destinations within the market on a general level? When do people go there? How walkable is it? Which roadways see the highest number of traffic? These are some of the few questions that are best solved throughout market research versus audience data. The last question really revolves around your messaging as well as your creative, right? The best products come from knowing your audience, what their pain points are, and how your product is going to solve them. Playing on contextual relevance is also important. Using social listening tools can be a really great way to get feedback on what the market is saying about you, as well as your competitors. So with that in mind, this is really important when you're building out your creative. It's really important to build a creative that really sticks with your audience, but at the same time, to make it stick with your specific audience, you need to make sure that your brand messaging aligns with their pain points and needs. I mentioned before that developing a strategy is developing a story. To look into some examples of how we do that, OneScreen on our website have free playbooks available for you across different topics, such as politics, dominating a conference, or an account-based marketing playbook to really dive into exactly how we go about that in detail. But once we have our story set, we've answered all the questions we needed to do, we've triangulated all the data to build our story, then we can get into the tactical out-of-home plan. Before we begin, I do want everyone to keep in mind to budget to benchmarks, plan with context, create engaging creative, and lastly, cast a wide net, measure, and optimize from there. With out-of-home, it's not just billboards, right? As I mentioned, there's a wide variety of formats out there, but they all typically fall within these four main buckets: billboards, street furniture, transit, and place-based out-of-home. How you build your plan and how you put all these tacticals together in your strategy can achieve different results. For example, if you want to focus on brand awareness, highway bulletins that sees a lot of vehicular traffic is a great way to expand your reach. If you want to drive more frequency and repetition, really toning in an area and doing buzzworthy executions can drive your interest and consideration, as well as utilizing formats that can get you really hyper targeted to a point of sale location is a really great way to achieve that ROI that you're looking for. Once you have a general idea of which markets as well as formats to consider, start reaching out to who sells the actual inventory. Traditionally, it would be through Google searches or contacts that you already know, or maybe you're leveraging an agency that does all the work for you. However, at OneScreen, we do have our own public-facing directory where you're able to filter by market and specific formats, so you know who to contact and ensure you aren't missing anyone. And that's really the first step of the planning process, right? The RFP, or a request for proposal. An RFP allows a planner to aggregate what's available in desired markets, how much inventory costs, as well as what the plan metrics are. Once you have all your aggregated availabilities back, I would recommend using a simple tool like Google Maps to evaluate your coverage, make sure the inventory aligns with the areas that you want to target based on where your target audiences are. And lastly, don't forget to evaluate the inventory as well. This kind of pertains to the value of the impression that I mentioned before. Does the inventory you're selecting perfect? Is it the perfect canvas for your messaging? Will it be able to pull on the heartstrings of your consumers? Does it follow the strategy and data? And then once you look at the pictures, is it obstructed at all? Is it actually visible? That's a very important step here.
Quick question for you, David.
Yep.
So a frequent question that we get is, what if you only want to buy a couple billboards? Is that doable? Is it worth it?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think it really depends on your objectives. I would say that if you're limited with the budget and you're selecting one or two bulletins, and to make sure that it really counts, it really works if you have an actual retail location of sorts for directional purposes. So maybe you want to have a bit more presence near your retail store location. Nowadays, we also have the power to measure what happens. So if you want to buy one or two billboards at a time, see if it works or not, and then scale up from there, those are definitely opportunities that can be done as well.
Great, that's good to know. And I'm sure people on this call are wondering that, so that's great. Could you also give any insight into what you look for when selecting inventory?
Yeah, I definitely can. And on the top line level, it's really, again, just looking at if it's structured or not, how close it is to a point of interest. But we do also have another webinar coming up called Diary of a Media Planner from our planner, Heather Wiseman, who can really kind of dive deep into what she looks for when it comes to evaluating inventory.
Yeah, that's great. So if anyone's interested on this webinar, please tune into the next one. You can register now, called Diary of an Out-of-Home Media Planner.
Thank you for that. So now that you planned out your plan, now we dive into the buying process a little bit. As I mentioned before, when it comes to budgeting, I would recommend budgeting to benchmarks using target rating points. As I said, it is a measurement with reach relative to frequency and a standard benchmark that people use to make sure they have an adequate level of saturation. Also, don't be afraid to negotiate costs to fit your budget. Most operators will work with you on that, so please don't hesitate. And lastly, when you're ready to contract, always make sure to double check for cancellation terms and payment terms, because that can vary by who you work with, as well as just making sure what you agreed upon is there in fine writing as well. So after you've done all that, you basically bought your first out-of-home campaign. Congrats. But it's not just over yet, because this is where the project management component comes in. So from there, I would recommend starting out with planning what your timelines are. I always like to give myself around 4 to 6 weeks before I launch to make sure that I can get all the other points in a good spot. Make sure your production team has the right documents, such as specifications, as well as deadlines to build creative around as soon as possible. Once you're ready to deliver your assets, make sure the right instructions are sent to the operators, such as knowing what creative to post on which unit. And then once you're finally launched, make sure that you're receiving proof of performances, which is sometimes in more detailed reports, but mostly it's going to be in photos to make sure that you're actually up and running. The last few points I want to talk about are creative and measurement. But starting out with creative best practices, some interesting statistics we were able to pull over the years was that 75% of an ad's effectiveness is determined by the creative. 70% of decision-making is emotional. And 48% of people are more likely to click a banner ad after seeing an out-of-home ad first. So this really solidifies how creative is half, if not more, the battle. So it's really important to make sure that, one, the messaging aligns with your audience. When and where will the ad campaign be seen? This kind of plays on seasonality as well as context. What the benefits are to your audience, as well as what is the sentiment or affinity you are trying to build to your audience as well. I would recommend being short and to the point. For a billboard, for example, 7 words or less is a good benchmark or a sweet spot. Make sure the background really contrasts well with the foreground to make that foreground really pop. And feel free to include call to action, such as URLs or phone numbers, but it's important to note that they have to be very easy to remember. I would also say go ahead and use QR codes, but in formats that are more geared towards pedestrian traffic versus vehicular traffic, because you don't want people pulling their phones out while they're driving, obviously. And the last point I wanted to touch on was measurement and optimization. Traditionally, measurement relied on surveys that took forever to get back, of just simple statistics such as brand recall studies. There were completion reports to see how long your campaign ran if we're touching on overrides. Nowadays, there are platforms that we can provide as well as others to measure down to foot traffic, web visitations, sales, and even app downloads. So I would always recommend, again, casting that wide net, looking into which formats, which areas, which time of day work the best, and optimizing there from your next campaign. And then also social listening is another great way to measure if you really think you have a buzzy execution or very engaged creative as well. And that was pretty much the basics on planning and buying your first campaign. As a quick recap, I would say, again, start with a strategy, understand your markets, answer the questions that you ask yourself, consider the best tactics and follow your story, evaluate your coverage and inventory at the same time. It's not one or the other. Don't be afraid to negotiate your costs, build engaging creative that plays on your product strengths, and measure and optimize from there. And always, if you need a helping hand, don't be afraid to reach out to OneScreen.ai.
Great, thank you, David. That was awesome. We do have some questions that came through, and if anyone has additional questions, please drop them in the Q&A right now. So the first question is, in general, how much should I plan to spend on my first out-of-home campaign?
Yeah, I mean, again, that really depends on your objectives. And if you're focusing more on brand awareness, as if you're there at the marketing funnel. Again, I would budget towards achieving a certain level of TRPs. The standard in most markets is going to be around 150 to 200 TRPs. There's different combinations, right? Maybe you're reaching a reach of 50% of your audience 3 times to reach that 150 TRP mark, or maybe you're reaching 100% of your audience twice. There's different ways to play around on it. You can reach out to us or your operators that you work with to know how many inventory it takes to budget that towards. In terms of timing, which plays on budgeting as well, we recommend usually for your first campaign 8 weeks as a standard. That kind of gives you enough time from a measurement perspective to get actionable knowledge there as well. But we've seen first campaigns run from between 25 to 50K and really run with it pretty well. And that's on the low end, but yeah.
Great. All right, next question. You mentioned different types of out-of-home formats. Are you seeing a particular type of out-of-home placement pick up more traction lately?
I definitely think, and this is on a market or an industry level, there's a rise of programmatic out of home that a lot of people talk about. A lot of people associate programmatic digital out of home with out of home as a whole. So I think that's really an interesting new format of sorts that's kind of picking up traction, where it's almost like the wild west. So I think people are still trying to figure out how to best utilize it. In our opinion, it's not an end-all be-all solution. There is a right time and place for it, but other than that, we definitely see mobility media and formats such as vehicular cars, for example. People really like that because of the hyper targetability, able to customize your routes, as well as really the advanced reporting aspect of it that's really kind of advanced over the years. So
great. And then another question we have is, what do you think of pizza box ads as out-of-home media?
I'm a big fan of pizza box ads. Again, I think contextual relevance is important. I think we looked into some cannabis companies that we've worked with in the past, and pizza and that
Right.
kind of work hand in hand. But again, I think if your offering makes sense, it's a really good way to get your brand, right in your audience's hands. And then again, having that engaging creative, the context is really what matters here too. So.
Right. Does OneScreen show available inventory in a designated market?
Yep.
Okay, and then I think we just have one more question. And do you recommend digital or static?
No, that's a great question. And I think, again, it's a case-by-case basis. And there's pros and cons to both, which I can touch on. But on a top-line level, let's say the pros to a static billboard is, one, you'll have 100% share of voice. Really allows you to plant your flag. I think it really works best if you want to permit out on an annual basis to really kind of associate that placement with your brand. Like people who are seeing your board on a daily basis, passing it by on their morning or evening commute, you end up being an information center of sorts that those audiences will rely on. Whereas in contrast with digital, because you're sharing space with other advertisers, unless you buy out the entire slots, there is a bit more room for clutter. But at the same time, you're able to test out your different creatives. You're able to swap creatives at no additional fee. You don't have to deal with any production or installation issues as well. So there's the benefits of that. And it really allows you to cast a wider net of sorts too.
And then we just had another question come in. I think it's regarding the platform. What are the formats that you show as available? Static, digital, billboard, street furniture, etc. Is it shown by vendor?
Yeah. So I do want to mention we aren't, a programmatic DSP of sorts. We're looking to build a two-sided marketplace. That means, yes, we do show every format that's available, as well as every vendor that's available that constitutes on their out of home.
Great, thank you. All right, I don't see any other questions. Yeah, I'm just checking the chat too because I saw one in there. Yeah, I think we're good. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you, David, for the great presentation and answering all the questions.
Great. Thanks for having me.
Of course.